westbound at Cooper.
Getting old, man.
Southbound, heaviest as you make your way through Westchester and Laughlin. Cleaning up wrecks on Spring Grove below 74 and on Crescentville near Monstello. Chuck Ingram on 55 KRC, the talk station.
This report is brought to you by TrueCar. Looking to buy a car? Online shopping can be confusing. Not anymore with True Price from TrueCar. Now you can know the exact price.
Did you check out Marcon's recent post?
Other people too.
I don't want you to miss it, that's all.
Visit TrueCar to enjoy a more confident car buying experience.
Stay connected all the time on all the socials.
This is the voice of freedom.
All the links at 55krc.com.
8:04 right now, 55 KRC Talk Station. A little foggy out there this morning, but it is Friday. That'll put a smile on anybody's face. Well, for me. Then again, I don't have to get up at 3 o'clock and go to work tomorrow. And I am pleased to be at work today, though. I've been looking forward to this all morning when I saw him on the rundown, because, today was a day I didn't want to deal with the heavier topics of the world, and I didn't want to deal with politics. And it was one of it's Friday. Can't we just have some fun today? And then I wake to, looking at these articles about life expectancy in the United States is dropping because of opioid abuse and suicides, and it's like, wow, and other problems in the world. And anytime you're surrounded with social media, those folks are going to bring you down. There's a lot of negativity in the world, and so it's awesome to have in studio Rick Greene. Rick's got a brand new book he wrote, Spirit Works, a God story, freedom from addiction. Rick, good to have you in studio, sir.
Thank you for having me.
I've been enjoying my conversation with you off air, getting to know a little bit about you and your story, and I am telling you, it's just hitting me on all cylinders, because you and I kind of share the same philosophy. We both are responsible for the person that stares at us in the mirror every morning, isn't that right?
Most definitely.
And you took responsibility for yourself. Now, I want to talk to you briefly, because it did come up this morning, and I'm sitting here scratching my head wondering, and I've seen drugs. I've been around drugs in my life. I went through high school and college, man, so there have been opportunities for me that I passed up. It's blown my mind that how anybody could ever sort of, okay, I'm going to try heroin today. I mean, that drug scares the living hell out of me, and it has ever since I had a health class back in junior high school or whatever, and they started talking about different kind of drugs out in the world. Most of them scared the living hell out of me. So I was one of those kids that just was afraid of drugs. But then again, I grew up in a different world. I wasn't around them. I've seen them, but I wasn't around them. I didn't live with them. Tell me how you became dependent on drugs, and let's talk quickly what your drug of choice was at first. What were you ultimately addicted to?
It was cocaine and crack.
Cocaine and crack. And then alcohol. You got one sending you one way, and then one bringing you down the opposite direction.
Yes.
And that's quite often the case. And you're addicted to downers, and people often will take uppers to get up in the day. So that makes perfect sense. You got a depressant and a stimulant going. But how is it, and how old were you when you first started using drugs?
I was around 14 years old. I mean, I can only tell you what my story was. Growing up around alcoholics and addicts, seeing that 7 days a week, it scarred me deeper than I ever thought it did. But what really, I believe, triggered mine was my mother never told me she loved me. And at 55 years old, that still hurt me. I still chase this ghost I can never catch because I want to hear it so badly.
Oh, wow.
And I got tired of the hurt and the pain. My mother was a very mean, evil, violent woman. She did things to kids that shouldn't be done to kids. And I got tired of the hurt and the pain. And I believe looking at all the adults in the house, it looked like they were having fun when they were high and drunk. And I wanted to know what that was about. I couldn't understand why they were always laughing and joking and having fun,
right.
And I was the only one in misery. I started to believe that there was something wrong with me.
Wow.
And that's when I started sneaking my father's beer at night when he was asleep, and that's how it all started.
It's that warm blanket that just masks the pain in people's lives, and people put that warm blanket on all the time. It's an easy refuge. It's like, call it self-medication. You're angry, you're depressed, and it offers a brief refuge, but that refuge ends up becoming the crutch that rules your entire life. That's a shame about your mother. I mean, that she was that type of person. Have you been able to, through your recovery efforts and your spirituality, have you ever decided that, you know what, that's not me, that was her, you know, she had her own issues growing up. She became that type of woman because perhaps she was surrounded by it, and maybe come up with some measure of forgiveness for her in spite of it?
Most definitely. By the grace of God, 2 years before she passed, she was in the nursing home because both of her kidneys had failed, so she was constantly on dialysis. And I went to go see her every day before work. Not so much because I loved her, I was so angry at her, but I promised my father before he died I would take care of mama. So I always went and saw her, and I saw this shell of a mean person that was just like in the fetal position, like childish, needing me now. And I had to love on her because I forgave her. I finally realized she didn't love herself. She had these 11 babies. I'm number 11. She didn't know how to love us because she never loved herself.
Well, that's very insightful right there. That is profoundly insightful, and I think that's probably where a lot of that anger and hate comes from a lot of people. If they just don't understand or love themselves, they're maybe upset with their lot in life. They felt they got a bad hand, and that anger just transforms and it projects off into every conversation people have in their lives and their actions as well. So the addiction problem began as you're a young teenager, and how did that progress? Because ultimately you got recovery, but after a stop in jail too, because I wanted to get to that as well. But so how did the disease progress? The drug addiction.
It got to the point where I was just working temp job to temp job just to keep the dope dealer off of me, keep him from hurting me, and to keep myself high. I was only clocking in to get high. There was no other person to clock in. And I mean, it hurt me because I married my first wife, and we had 4 sons, and we wound up losing our apartment. And it's painful to say that she fell in love with an addict, but I was so good at hiding it, she didn't know it. And I mean, that hurts me 7 days a week. My ex-wife was always a good woman. She just fell in love with the wrong cat, and my heart breaks for her to this day. You know, the wife I have now got the husband she deserved.
Wow, that's really amazing that you look at it that way. Were you able to, I know in multi-step programs, the 12-step programs, like with Alcoholics Anonymous, they ask you to go out and apologize or try to make amends to those people that you've hurt in your life. Do you ever go back and talk to your ex-wife about your addiction, your problems, and in your recovery?
It's hard because my ex-wife and my 4 older sons don't want nothing to do with me. You know, I try to reach out to them when I can through social media, but most of the time they block me. I mean, I'm okay with that because I understand I gave them a plate they didn't ask for. I gave them a plate they didn't deserve. She didn't deserve an alcoholic, addicted husband. They didn't deserve a father that chose cocaine over them. I get it. I made my own bed. I got to deal with it. I may not ever be friends with them again in life, and that's going to hurt me, but I pray to God that he brings us together someday.
Well, I can only imagine this process that you've gone through, and the book, which we're going to get to, we're talking about Spirit Works, A God Story, Freedom from Addiction. Maybe they'll get it. Maybe like them, once they understand the demons that you wrestled with, and they get an insight into how your life was growing up, surrounded by addiction, an abusive mother. You didn't mention you mentioned you had father who was apparently around. Was he similarly abusive or an addict himself, or in the home?
Actually, Dad was where the love was at.
Really?
He was a functioning alcoholic. I don't know how this man drove that 53-wheeler, 18-wheeler, 50 years and fed 13 people and never missed work, but would drink till 4 in the morning and still get up at 6.
Whoa!
I don't know how Daddy he never missed work.
That's amazing.
And took us to church every Sunday. And he was a functioning alcoholic.
That's amazing. I can't imagine that. I couldn't function on that little sleep, my friend. You know what I'm saying? Okay, so, but maybe I was going back to your children and your ex-wife, and whether or not you speak with your ex-wife or not, but your children, they're your blood. I would like to think that if they read the book, maybe they get some insight into you and how bad it was and how it is that you came to be who you are, that they might come to forgive you and you can reestablish that relationship, or establish perhaps for the first time a nice relationship with them. How old's your oldest?
My oldest son is 33 and the youngest is 18, and I'm praying to God somehow, some way that they'll hear about this book, or maybe even by the grace of God we'll secure the funding, because it's a screenplay now. And
really?
hopefully one day we can get the screenplay made into a film. Because I love my city. It's a good Cincinnati story. It's all pretty ugly. Don't get me wrong.
Well, we got another segment, too, because we're going to get into the details on that, because I know you love your city.
I'm hoping that somehow, some way, my kids can hear about it. And just maybe, even if they won't let me be their father, I would accept being their friend. I would love to know them and watch them grow and get married. And I would just love to be there.
Well, you're in the ideal position to be a friend. Maybe you missed out on the opportunity to be the father. I think of a father not only as the creator, helping to create the children, but someone who's responsible for education and to keep the kids in line, establish boundaries and establish rules. And you only got 18 years, maybe a few more to do that. So now that they're adult children, it's like me with my children. Mine are 24, 22. I feel like I can be friends with them now. The education part, the disciplinarian part, that's over with. I've spoken, I've given all the lectures, and I've done all. It's gone. They're adults now. That I've made my bed, they've made their bed. We are all lying in that. But now I can be a friend to them. So I would like to think you're in an ideal position now, and they are of ideal age. You've got all the time in the world now, recovering. You're still healthy. They're healthy. That will happen. That you will ultimately reconcile with them. And if they're out there, they're listening to this podcast at some point, reach out to your father. It would be a beautiful thing for you guys to get back together again. Rick, we're going to talk specifically about Spirit Works, because I want to hear about your stint in jail. I want to hear how it is you ended up giving your kidney away to Marvin Gaye III. And I also want to hear about your spiritual transformation, too. More with author Rick Greene. It's 8:15 right now, 55 KRC Talk Station. First word for Infinity is Cincinnati, located in the King's Auto Mall. You know the exit. I-71 Fields Erdel exit. Just stay on Fields early. You see the King's Auto Mall on the left-hand side. Pull on in. That's where you're going to find Fred Farrar, the general manager, Vince West, the sales manager, and the awesome, and I will double score awesome, Infinity QX50, the brand new 2019 QX50, and it's just in time for winter. You're going to love this car. All-wheel drive crossover. It's got the brand new powerful turbo engine, putting out all kinds of great horsepower, but also, of course, giving you superior fuel economy. It's a great car. I think it's a pretty darn beautiful car as well. And this is Infinity. So, yes, it's a luxury car, but inexpensive to own and a whole lot of fun to drive. Talk to Fred and Vince about that. Get a set of keys, drive it around. You'll love the car. It's Infinity of Cincinnati in the King's Auto Mall.
55 KRC.
Don't miss Global Citizen Festival.
All your kids still living in Cincinnati?
Yeah, all four of them.
They'll hear.
I got 6 boys out there. I got 2 with my wife at home, and like I always tell people, even if I can have the 4 older, I'll have to deal with that. I pray to God, can the 4 and the 6 meet? Because they're always going to be brothers.
If you ever get your relationship back with your 4 kids, your first wife's kids, you're going to meet. You're going to have a family reunion. You're going to have a party. Everybody's going to get around, eat some good food, and establish a relationship. That's guaranteed. The question is, you got to get them over that hurdle and get that chip off their shoulder and introduce them to the concept of forgiveness, and let them realize you got the redemption. I mean, you are struggling to work to improve your life, and you're doing it for them. You're doing it for your current family. You're doing it for yourself. I'm confident. Somebody will send them a podcast for a conversation, and maybe it'll hit them just right.
I'm praying to God. I'm grateful that one of them had them block me on Instagram and Facebook. So at least I get this. I almost crying because he lets me see his life. And one of them, about 3 years ago, messaged me on Facebook. He said, "I don't hate you. I just don't know you." And I love that message.
Yeah,
that was my birth baby, Brandon.
He
said, "I don't hate you. I just don't know you." So I just send them my phone number, and maybe they'll call when but I always make sure no matter where I'm at, they're going to have my phone number.
That's good. That's good. I'm confident that it will happen. I couldn't imagine not wanting, under the circumstances and knowing about your problems, not wanting to sort of establish some sort of relationship. You're the father.
Brandy's been married about 3 months now, the oldest. I just want to meet her.
Oh, yeah.
Oldest son.
You got any grandkids yet?
No.
All right. Maybe that'll be the opportunity when the grandkids start coming. I feel confident.
Any door God open, I'm ready.
To see if you could save 15% or more on car insurance. Go to geico.com today and see how much you could save.
Time for the 9 first warning weather forecast. Got a little fog out there, and it sure is foggy. Be careful on the commute, would you? It'll be a cloudy day all day with a high of 50. We've got some showers coming overnight, low of 44. Tomorrow, a rainy day with maybe some afternoon thunderstorms thrown in the mix. 58 the high tomorrow. Sunday is going to be a beautiful day, sunny and 60. It's 40 right now. Time for a traffic update. Chuck.
From the UC Health Traffic Center at UC Health, our research gives patients hope. Take part in a clinical trial by visiting uchealth.com/research. Problems northbound 75 with an accident above the lateral. Left lane's blocked. It's going to add to it. Already moving slow out of St. Bernard. Inbound 74 backs
Lauren and Jerry.
Which one's the oldest?
Oh, Jerry, 24. Lauren's 22. She's in New York with her boyfriend. If he wasn't a decent guy, I'd be pissed.
The way you threw the phone.
He's 19 right now. 55 KRCD Talk Station. Brian Thomas here in studio. Rick Greene, author of Spirit Works. You can get a copy of this book at 55krc.com, and as Rick pointed out in the last segment, going to be made into a play?
Actually, it's a screenplay.
A screenplay.
Yeah.
All right. Excellent. And hopefully we'll get the chance to see that down the road. In the meantime, we can read the book. It's not a long read. It's a paperback book, about 50 pages or so. 55krc.com is the place to get it. Rick, it's a story of his transformation from the teenage drug user all the way through a stint in prison into where he is today, recovering, supporting. He's got support and love of his second wife. He's got two children with his second wife who he's got a good relationship with. And we're praying together that maybe perhaps this conversation, or perhaps his first wife and 4 children reading this book and getting a greater understanding about his struggles might ultimately end in some form of reconciliation. Rick, how is it that you ended up in jail? Jail is something that has always, again, scared the living hell out of me. I am a model citizen because I never want to spend a minute in jail. Scary stuff. You, how did it happen?
Being addicted and not paying child support. That's how I wound up in jail. You know,
no, yes, I know.
Kids with my ex-wife, but I wasn't paying child support because I was too busy. The cycle of paying the dope man and getting high, I got behind on child support.
Yeah, I remember doing that. You know, I used to work in a domestic relations court under Judge Paniotto. I was in the child support division. I used to sit in those magistrate courts, and we would bring in fathers. We called them deadbeat dads who weren't paying the child support. And I remember watching some of those guys go off to prison. You give them a whole bunch of time, and then finally, like, have you looked for jobs? No. Have you tried to get a job? No. Have you paid any support? No. Well, we told you the last 3 times you're going to be doing a 10-day stint in the jail if you didn't come over here with some child support money, and off they went. I remember Judge Beckwith saying, I hope you brought your toothbrush. Not a fun place to be, though. Did that change you at all, your experience of having to go to jail?
You know, I was in the Justice Center probably 6 or 7 times due to child support. But my mind was so polluted, I just couldn't think correctly. And I was so young and naive at the time, to be honest. I knew everybody in there. It just wasn't scary.
Wow.
I never thought I would go to prison.
But what about the withdrawal? Didn't you have a withdrawal while you were there? I mean, if you're a heavy user and you're in, I always get this impression that people are going to be sweating and rolling around and your cravings like you see on television. How'd you manage the drug addiction while you were locked up?
I think it became more of a mind thing. I knew I wasn't going anywhere until the gatekeeper opened the door. This is where I'm going to be at. I just believe it was more of a mind thing. There was no way out.
Huh. I wonder if there's some way to parlay that into day-to-day life. How'd you end up beating the addiction?
I don't believe that I beat it by myself. I remember specifically, and I'll tell you the prayer I prayed to God. I said, Father God, please remove my desire for drugs and alcohol. And that's exactly what God did. I knew alcohol and drugs would be here until the end of time. I also knew that the desire is what I was a slave to. I never asked him to remove drugs and alcohol. I was a slave to my desire. There's a big difference.
Yeah.
And I specifically prayed for that. And after crying and praying to God, I remember getting up that day and I poured the cocaine down the toilet and I poured the beer down the toilet. And I remember breaking my cigarettes and I asked God to cleanse my tongue. And I haven't cussed since 1998. So I knew it was bigger than Rick Greene.
And you did this, I would say on your own. Obviously, your spiritual relationship with God helped you get through this. You had guiding hands or whatever, but Did you get any outside recovery assistance? You go to a 12-step program? Did you get involved in some sort of AA kind of thing, or Narcotics Anonymous, whatever there is out there?
No, it was just me and God. That's why I
Really?
know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but I have to say it. I don't look at addiction as a disease. I have a niece about 5 months back. She had a double vasectomy. She didn't want cancer. Cancer chose her. I made a horrible choice to mess with cocaine and alcohol. I triggered my addiction. I also stopped my addiction. I can't look at it as a disease. If it was a disease, then how come I've been clean for 20 years, June 15th of this year? And nobody can explain that to me. My niece didn't turn off cancer or turn it on. It chose her.
How about that?
That's just my opinion. Addiction is not disease. I believe addiction comes from your choice. If you never chose cocaine, you won't be a cocaine addict. And people don't want to hear that, but I have to keep saying it.
And if you pass it up, even though you've tried it and you've been addicted to it, you can stop when you choose to stop.
I believe you can.
And how much did your spiritual relationship? You're very spiritual man. It's obvious, evident from the name of the book itself. Is that your connection? Is that your the spirituality part of it? Is that what helped keep you clean and sober for 20 years? I mean, you have obviously a very strong conviction. You have told me off air, I am responsible for the man in the mirror. Nobody else is.
Yeah.
You've made these decisions and you've done this recovery on your own, which a lot of addiction specialists will say is all so difficult. How much of importance was God in your recovery?
I don't believe you can recover without God. I believe if you choose to run from your addiction, you're just going to grab something else. I chose to grab God because he loved me first. He loved me through my addiction. He was with me in the alleys at Over the Rhine and Price Hill and Norwood, places I shouldn't be at 3 and 4 in the morning, watching people getting beat up and hurt. And by the grace of God, I don't know why it never happened to me. I'm going to funerals of people ODing and dying, and I just got high with them the day before, and God kept sparing me. I knew that there was something more to life than getting high. I knew God loved me so much because he kept saving me from myself.
That is really amazing. Now, the day that you threw the coke and the alcohol and the cigarettes down the toilet, the day you decided you're going to quit, was there an epiphany? Did something happen in advance of that moment that made you say, this is it, I'm going to stop?
That's funny you would ask me that. I kind of like this part of the story and I kind of don't. The devil was always whispering to me, you can never beat me, why don't you kill yourself? And that day when he said, Rick, why don't you kill yourself? I said, why don't you kill yourself? He made me so angry that day. I threw away the drugs. I poured the beer down the toilet. That's why I ask people, and I don't want to ask them, do I thank Satan for irritating me that day? I was so sick of him whispering in my ear, why don't you kill yourself? You'll never beat me. Something snapped that day.
Help.
I wanted to show him I can't beat you. It was anger. I wanted to show him my God is bigger than your voice. I wanted to show him that you're even subject to my God.
That's awesome. That is an amazing thing to look at. I heard a quote the other day that seems to fit right nicely in that. If you're worried about the existence of the devil, you should view it perhaps as a good thing, because if the devil exists, it's proof that God exists. So you picked the right side of the equation on that one, and it sounds to me like you've done one hell of a great job proving day in and day out that he can be beat. 20 years. That's something to be really proud of. And all by yourself. I mean, you have people around you who are your support network, but this was your choice, and you did it, man. And you wrote a great book on it. I'm going to encourage my listeners to get a copy of it, which they can do at 55krc.com. Buy a copy of Spirit Works by my guest today, Rick Greene, A God Story, Freedom from Addiction. And didn't get to the Marvin Gaye story, but I'm going to leave that for my listeners to find out when they read your book, which I know they will. And good luck turning it into something we can watch on TV.
Well, thank you for having me.
Rick, it's been a real pleasure, man. Uplifting story. We need those right around this time. And I know you're a big fan of the city of Cincinnati. We were talking about that as well. You wanted to prove out there that there's some beautiful things going on around town, aren't there?
Oh, definitely. I love my city. I want the world to love my city.
Well, we all love our city too, and one of the reasons people tune in to 55 KRC every Friday is because at 8:40 we've got a great list of stuff and things. This week, Tricia Suit from downtown Cincinnati is going to talk about that. Don't go away. We'll be right back with some additional local stories. After this word for Emory Federal Credit Union, real quick here for Emory. Love those folks at Emory Federal Credit Union. That's where I bank. You know, I still keep my account at the big bank. And I honestly not quite sure why, because I certainly prefer the banking experience at Emory Federal Credit Union. Customer service is number one. I think you're basically like an owner. They treat you so well, you think, oh, do I own this place? And a mortgage through Emory is a great thing, too, because they keep their paper. At least that's my situation. They don't sell their paper off to a secondary market. And that means they can work with you on lowering interest rates when the interest rates drop. It's a great experience. I was paying like 4%. I thought it was on top of the world. Well, at one point, the interest rates dropped down to like 3%. And you know how much it cost me to get my interest rate on my mortgage without refinancing, without changing all the terms and conditions, without paying $1? It took a signature on a piece of paper. And they do that for everybody. So it's one of the benefits you get from Emory Federal Credit Union, where you are number one. It's customer service. It's what it's all about. Give them a call today, 530-9351. Find them online at emoryfcu.org.
55 KRC.
The Simply Money service zone.
I still feel a certain way when people ask me how I do it in the whole devil part. It just angers me.
No, I've never heard anybody look at it that way or approach it that way. You know, I've read stories about addiction. I've interviewed people who are specialists in addiction, doctors and all that, because everybody's searching for answers. But the idea of you sort of looking at the devil as a physical being whispering in your ear, you know, for me, I don't look at it that way. To me, that's the internal demon that I wrestle with. You know, we've all got our problems, and you know, that's just me. You know, I'm not attributing it to somebody else, but someone could say that to themselves. Dude, you're a better person than that. You got to get rid of that shit. You got to, you know, it's your problem. Just with the pit, the forces against each other. I've never heard anybody describe it that way. I think it's awesome.
I hate that day and I love that day because I know God loves me. He would never hurt or harm me in any way. So I knew it wasn't him.
Well, that's supposed to be the
I
way
knew
it
it wasn't
is.
him.
That's what the devil's for.
Man, oh man.
Man, it's great talking with you.
Absolutely on.
Great talking.